What is stranded cotton or embroidery floss or cotton floss or whatever other names you have for it? It's basically embroidery thread. It's the most common thread that is used in hand embroidery. And this is what it looks like when you buy it most of the time. So there's two main brands. This one is DMC and this one is Anchor. So they're both very good brands, the two best ones in my opinion. There are other ones as well, some kind of cheaper ones that you can buy, but I think these two are the best quality. Um, and the two of them have quite different shades, so it's always good to look at both if you're looking for a particular color. But anyway, stranded cotton, the reason it is called stranded cotton is because if you find the end of it there, if you tease that apart, you'll see that this thread is made up of 6 different strands. Okay, it's always 6, it's always the same number, it's always 6 strands of thread to make up the rest of it. So you can stitch with all 6 strands if you want. You can stitch with 1 strand. You can stitch with any number in between. Sometimes it just depends on the look you are going for. Some stitches look very different if you're using 1 strand compared to 6 strands. So it really just depends. So what we're gonna do is just... I zoom out there. We're going to pull out some thread here. Now it's always best to use an amount just down to your elbow. Okay, so you're stretching from your hand just down to your elbow, that I can just about get in the shot there. So that length is always the best length to use. And the reason for that is if it's much longer than that, it can get kind of tangled up in itself, or it can start to kind of wear away as you're stitching with it. Oops, shaking the camera. So it can start to kind of wear away a little bit. So imagine as you're stitching, your thread is constantly going through the fabric, it's constantly being pulled at. There's a lot of friction there. It wears away at the thread. So if your thread is really long, that happens for a lot longer and your thread ends up getting really weak and breaking in the middle of your stitching, and that's not what you want at all. So a length just down to your elbow is the best, or about like 20-25 centimeters, something like that, is usually the kind of length from your hand down to your elbow. So that's how much you want to cut. So I've cut that much there. And now we're going to separate the strands. Now the best way to do this, no matter how many strands that you want to use, the best way to do this, if you hold your thread in one hand like that, and you're going to just pick out one of those strands of thread. So I'll pick that one there, and I'm just going to pull straight up. Just pull straight up. You can see the bottom gets a little bit tangled, but once you pull the thread out, it falls out again. Okay, and you just want to straighten that bit of thread there again. Make sure it's nice and straight, there's no tangles in it, before you pull out the next strand. Okay, if I zoom out, you'll see exactly what I'm doing. So just pulling straight up and out. Okay, so whether you're using 1 strand, 3 strands, 6 strands, I would separate all of them. Okay, the reason for that is, let me just, so when your thread comes to you like this, when all 6 strands are together, they're very kind of twisted around each other. Here I've separated all my threads and I'm going to put them back together again. This might seem a bit redundant, a bit pointless, but just trust me, okay? So just putting them all back together. Now, so I have them all back together now, and I'm going to compare them to the other thread, and you can see the top one, that's how the thread comes to you. The bottom one is after I have separated them and put them back together. So you can see that the separated one, it lies a lot flatter, a lot neater than the way it comes. Okay, so it can make a bit of a difference to the look of your piece. I find it just helps it to look a little bit neater. So I would always recommend separating all your threads, no matter how many you're using. Okay, so that's how you separate them. And that's how you use your stranded floss. Stranded cotton, embroidery floss. I'm sure there are plenty of different names for it as well, but I think I've covered most of them. So yeah, that's how you use it. I'll do another video on how to thread your needle, but that's the basics of embroidery floss. So yeah, if you have any more questions, do let me know. I'll try to answer them, but I think I've covered what I can in this video.